Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Bestseller Live. I am your host, Cynthia Johnson, and I am here today with an incredible author, Dr. Stephen G. Post. He recently published Pure Unlimited Love, Science and the Seven Paths to Inner Peace. Dr. Post, who has allowed me to call him Stephen throughout this interview, is the director of the Center for Medical Humanities, Compassionate Care, and Bioethics at Renaissance School of Medicine at Stony Brook University, and president of the Institute for Research on Pure Unlimited Love, which he founded with his mentor, Sir John Templeton. A leading voice at the intersection of science, spirituality, and compassion in the action, he has spent more than 40 years researching how love, giving, and altruism shape health, resilience, and cultural transformation. This is not his first book. Dr. Post has also authored several books, including Pure Unlimited Love and Why Good Things Happen to Good People, and has published over 400 articles in peer-reviewed journals. Welcome, Dr. Post, Stephen. It's wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. It's nice to meet you.
So it's really interesting reading your bio. It's this medical meets spirituality, but in an almost institutional sense, which I haven't seen much. Can you give us a little rundown of how your career became so wide?
Well, originally I was very much into world religions at the University of Chicago, and I was very excited by spirituality, and I continue to be so. However, I needed a good day job, and so I went into medical ethics, to be blunt, and that's been very rewarding. I've enjoyed it. I've been teaching at the major medical schools around the country: Chicago, Michigan, Case Western for 20 years, and Stony Brook for 16 years. But always have simultaneously kept my hand in the world of spirituality and spiritual writing. And I've been able reasonably well to incorporate that into medical school education, especially here at Stony Brook. It doesn't work every time, but here it's worked very, very well. And so I feel comfortable and happy, and I can't complain. And I'm speaking to you from my office at, again, the Renaissance School of Medicine, because medicine needs a renaissance. It's gotten so far away from compassionate care, and that's got to be the great future of healing.
And with this book, who did you write it for? Like, who is Pure Unlimited Love for?
Well, I wrote it really for young people, teenagers, young adults, because it kind of lays out some ideas about how life might look if you follow certain paths and you try to be loving every day, meditational, loving, intentional, and so that's really who I wrote it for. I'm not sure that it's necessarily going to catch on with the young people, but it's doing pretty well.
In the book, you talk about the 7 paths. So are they 7 clear directions that you run through?
Well, not in a draconian way. I mean, I'm not trying to impose anything on anyone, but these are the 7 paths that I have found in my journey to be most meaningful. And we've also studied them with my institute at some very fine universities and looked at how you can operationalize love, by which I mean a profound kind of love, not the love of designer jeans or chocolate, although I have nothing against those things. But that's what it is. It's about the ways of love in these 7 different contexts. and how they can bring you a lot of joy and fulfillment.
And how do you define love in the book?
Aha. Well, I define love without any reference to uh, Greek or Latin or ancient languages. My definition is typically coffee house type language, everyday language. So, borrowing a little bit from a psychiatrist at the University of Chicago, um, when the security and the well being of another is as real or meaningful to you as your own, there's still self love in this. You love that person. Um, it works when I think about meeting an old friend in a coffee shop. They've had a hard time. When I think about a physician who has made a medical mistake and is thinking about leaving the field, it works when somebody comes in my office and tells me that their child, their son, has relapsed into an addiction disorder. So it's kind of commonsensical as a definition. No Far Eastern languages, although I think it's suitable for every culture. When the happiness and the security, the well-being and security of another is as real or meaningful to you as your own, and sometimes more so. That's in there. You love that person.
And this, even though it sounds as a by definition sort of outwardly facing or other, right?
Mm-hmm.
It has a profound impact on the person. So if I have the capacity to love, you and your experience, how does that then impact me?
Well, it brings you inner peace. I don't like to use the word happiness too much because it's been so widely abused. Everybody has written a book on happiness. Um, and what do we mean by happiness? Some people have very hedonistic definitions. Some people talk about it in very spiritual terms. Some people talk about it in terms of being totally immersed in the flow of creativity. Uh, there's so many definitions. It's even worse than the word love. So I like the word love, but pure unlimited love is a little different than just love because, as one of my physician friends said not long ago, right here in this office, I asked him, Jeff, he's a bit of a mystic. I said, what do you think pure unlimited love is? And he paused and he said very thoughtfully and beautifully, he said, unlimited love is the first thing you see when you close your eyes for the last time. Hopefully.
Hmm.
Hopefully. And so we've actually done, for a fair amount of research on remembered experiences of death and how people will speak about this uncanny and profound love that they may have encountered. Not everyone, maybe 20% of people who are resuscitated after several hours will recount that kind of an experience. But that's not just a sort of a human behavioral thing. That's more metaphysical. So on the one hand, there's love as a human behavior, and then there's also love as the ultimate reality
Right.
underlying all that is. When the great philanthropist Sir John Templeton was dying, his son Jack, who is was a pediatric trauma surgeon, he's dead now. He called me up on my flip phone. We had flip phones at the time, and he said, "Dad is dying, and he has a favor to ask of you." And I said, "Well, what is it?" And Jack said he wants you to write a book because
Mm.
he's not going to have a chance to write it himself. And I said, "Did he give you a title?" And Jack said, "Yes, ultimate reality is unlimited love." And I thought, well, That's quite a title. Uh, Not easy. But on the other hand, I might do it because I loved Sir John and we were loyal to one another. So I said, could you go back to your dad's bed and ask him a question? Could we get a question mark at the end of that? So Jack came back a few minutes later and he said, yeah, Dad says, is ultimate reality unlimited love? And I felt good because I didn't have to really prove anything in a knockdown, drag out way. I could be working on plausibility and hypothesis and be more free in what I was saying. And we published that with at Templeton Press years ago. I mean, probably 12 years ago. Um, but it was fun. And I owe Sir John a lot. I'm not just a solo mind. I've had some major and wonderful influences along the line.
That story is, it hits very close. I had a close mentor who passed away a couple of years ago and also left me a book title. That is a very random, Dr. Mark Woolston, I don't know if you're familiar. And he did the same thing, except he left very little instruction. Just the, I think you should do this note. So as
Did you?
I have started, my co-host of this show, we swap off. We are writing it together. So
Yeah, it's kind of a fearful project because who can really deeply understand the mind of another human being, especially when they've checked out and they're not on the earth anymore. But I worked for 18 years with Sir John, and we started all kinds of positive psychology institutes together on gratitude and forgiveness and wisdom and kindness, and at major universities around the country and around the world. And so I felt like I knew him, and he felt like he knew me, and he entrusted me to do that, which was I think, a compliment.
Yeah, that is what pure unlimited love looks like, I think.
Yeah.
To trust someone with your thoughts after life.
Yes.
And in the book, the subtitle sort of kind of speaks to this idea that you might address chaos as like, how can you live in a world of unconditional love through chaos, or maybe more unpredictable pressure, intense times.
Well, we live in very challenging times because I think we have, number one, we've forgotten how to laugh, including laugh at ourselves. Everybody is just so hyper serious. I'm a pretty serious guy, but I still love mirth. And in fact, on my circle of love, mirth is an expression of love. So you're out in California, UCLA, they have the Norman Cousins Center for Psychoneuroimmunology. And he was a writer in New York. He was the editor of the New York Review of Books. And he had a terrible autoimmune disease. The doctors couldn't help him in the least. So what did he do? He said, I'm going home and I'm going to laugh. So he watched videos from Candid Camera and the Three Stooges and the Marx Brothers and whatever. And he actually got better. And he founded a major worldwide movement through that particular series of actions. And there's now an Institute for Psychoneuroimmunology at the NIH. And they do beautiful studies on laughter at UCLA, which I think is really cool.
That's I did not know that. That's incredible. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Hey,
Yeah.
so I use little. They're not quite as bad as dad jokes, but I use a little more complicated mirth. Always positive, always uplifting, with patients who are interested in that, with medical students, with other clinicians. So my most recent one is this. See if you can get this. What do you do if you have dyslexia, insomnia, and you are an agnostic?
What do you do if you have, dyslexia, insomnia,
And
Hallucinate?
no, and you're an agnostic. Well, that's as good as it might get. But I suppose I would say the answer is there is an answer. You're up all night wondering about the existence of dog. And
Yeah.
so always uplifting, always hilarious. And that's because I fear that in our culture we're so locked into this horrifying acrimony and hatred that sometimes divides couples and families and children and parents and good old friends. I just don't want to have anything to do with it. I mean, I understand politics is serious business, but ultimately, my answer to your question, which is what I'm getting to, is that truly spirituality has to be at the core of our lives and our hearts, not politics. Because politics is so divisive. When I was a kid growing up, my mother was very Irish, my father was very
Mhm.
British.
Oh,
She liked John F. Kennedy, my dad liked Nixon, and they would argue and debate at the table, but they never threatened each other and they never killed each other. Uh, and I learned that you can disagree without hatred. And that's what I think we need to get back to, is the idea that you can be, even in disagreement about serious matters, you can still be loving.
and in that case, what you're describing would be this pure unlimited love, as you can you don't have to own that person's thoughts or feelings to value them as
Yeah,
theirs. Or
right. And I teach a lot of courses, graduate courses, and I always have debates. I ask students to take up with integrity and respect a position that they do not agree with. And I ask them to present it as clearly as possible, to think about all the counterpoints, and then to really tell us what they think in light of what they've said. And that's really the classical modality of philosophy, because otherwise you just get into this incredible acrimony and it becomes so diabolical and so hate filled. You have to step back in humility and take more seriously ideas of others that may be flawed and imperfect in your own mind, but that you still want to encounter.
what is the biggest uh, challenge, or I guess argument, against what you're saying? I mean, do you face people saying, "Oh yeah, but you can't love everybody," or
Oh, well, yeah, so you can't love everybody. Uh, that's a very good comment. And the bottom line is that we can love everybody. Now, it may not necessarily be something that just comes from our own hearts, because human love has its limits. Even parental love, which is probably, for the most part, a pretty solid form of love, but not always. Um, I mean, motherly love is a beautiful, beautiful thing, but it can be a little abusive. It can be sometimes unwise. You can spoil your kids so they just love people who look exactly like they do. They don't have any of that sense of a shared humanity. You can love them into selfishness. So even parental love, motherly love, uh, can be flawed, and fatherly love can be equally flawed, and flawed in very violent ways. So, I mean, if you look at the people who have done horrible kinds of things in the history of humanity, a lot of them have been abused by their fathers, including Putin and Hitler and you name it. If you read their biographies, it's frightening. So hurt people hurt people. And so that's why, when I look at anybody, I ask myself, what have they been through? Uh, how have they suffered? And that always helps me to be more loving, at least more understanding and more loving. Remember Robin Williams, the great comedian? You know how when he was doing Mork and Mindy, he would just, run off these crazy lines and no one could keep up with him. That's because he grew up in northern Detroit and his father was an executive for GM and his mother was never around and he had no siblings and no neighbors to speak of. They lived in a big mansion. So he had a great love for toy soldiers, the little toy soldiers that you pick up. And he would put on battle scenes, you know, and he would be speaking for the blue soldiers and the red soldiers and the green soldiers, and he would be at the Battle of the Bulge. He'd be at Marlborough. He was incredible, and so he learned all of that talent of improvising with his toy soldiers. Not that he was happy, but he expanded the canvas and he made something beautiful out of something that was frankly a little bit sad, I think. Um, and in a way, that's what we have to do with life. We have to take difficult moments and expand them into the best we can do. Can I tell you a quick story?
Please.
I came here I was 20 years at Case Western Reserve Medical School. I loved it there. And I still go back and I'm wearing a Cleveland shirt. They're now the Guardians, not the Indians. And that's probably a good idea. And they got rid of the Chief Wahoo image, which was unacceptable. But, I left Cleveland with a lot of pain in my heart because even though I had a prestigious job here in New York and it was paying me more money and there were a lot of positives, I was running my own program as I wanted to design it. It was still very painful. So I got here and I'll tell you, it was the summer of 2008 and it was raining cats and dogs. And my wife was with me and my son, my younger child, Drew. And suddenly it dawned on them that we'd really left Cleveland. He was getting texts from the people on his soccer team in junior high. And Dad, how am I going to play soccer? I'm in New York. So, and my wife was very upset. We had talked about this, but it hadn't really been processed. And so they were screaming bloody murder. It was one of the worst nights of my life. And what did I do? I didn't get mad. I went out in the car. First, I said, hold on. I can't really do much about this at this point, but I can go out and get some pizza. So I went out in the car on 25A to Little Joe's Pizzeria. And I was in the foyer of the pizza place, and there was a newspaper only known to natives of the North Shore of Long Island. It's called the Three Village Herald. And the only article on the front page was in big black print, the headline, "Unlimited Love Comes to Stony Brook." And some cub reporter had gone online. I'd done things for Oprah and Dr. Oz, all kinds of stuff. And she picked all that up. And she even interviewed the dean of the medical school, who was a very well-known pediatric nephrologist, and my department chair. And they said, well, we don't know much about this unlimited love stuff, but we think he can create a program that will help medical students and physicians practice more compassionately. So they already were ahead of the game because that was a great thing to hear. So what happened was, I thought it was just a terrible way to get started. The next day I was coming up the escalator in the medical school for the first time. And there was a guy up on the top of the escalator with his arms folded like Mr. Clean in those old commercials. And he said to me, "Are you Dr. Post?" And I said, "Yes, sir. Can I help you?" And he said, these were the first words I got here at this medical school: are you going to save us? And I said, this was an almost Nobel Prize laureate biochemist. I said, I'm not sure, but I'll do my best. And then that next morning, I called the president of the university who had hired me, and I said, Shirley, how'd you like that article in the Three Village Herald? And she said, well, I read it. It was interesting. I said, did anybody give you phone calls about it? Because you wonder, you know. She said, yeah, I got a lot of phone calls from emeritus professors, male emeritus professors. And I asked her, what did they say? Well, they wanted to know, what kind of love are we talking about? So it was a very difficult moment, honestly, because I thought, oh my God, how can I build anything here with this kind of news article out about me on the first day and everybody reading it? But they were wonderful. They were great. They understood it. They actually, a lot of them agreed with it and came to my office and said, how can we make this a world of unlimited love? So I knew I was in the right place, even though it was a hard beginning. So you have to expand the canvas like a Jackson Pollock painting. Begins with a lump of paint that isn't very attractive, but by the time he covers it over with all those psychedelic lines of great coloration, it's in the Museum of Modern Art.
It sounds like you're exactly where you're supposed to be, because what good is your message if everyone already heard it and is practicing it?
Yes.
Right? Like, it's the pressure of entering that space and having to almost explain yourself.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I started this center for medical humanities and compassionate care, and tacked on bioethics, although that's less important. Much more interested in the humanism and the compassion. And we've created all kinds of new approaches, and we were awarded the Alpha Omega Alpha National Award for innovation in the identity formation of medical students. And we've gotten all kinds of other really neat awards too, a lot of national recognition. And the students just love this stuff. They come into medicine wanting to be empathic and compassionate and kindly. And it kind of gets drummed out of them because of the schedules and a whole lot of other factors.
Yeah.
But we want, you know, our students, shockingly, they're very attractive candidates to the top residencies in the country because they're more than most residents might otherwise be. They want to talk about compassionate care. They've done research on it, and people just want to talk to them about that. And they wonder, could you possibly bring that here to Yale or to wherever it might be? And they do.
I have two more questions, and we're running out of time, so I'm going to give it, but I have to get this out. Do you see any sort of trend with the medical students who really get it?
The ones today are better than they were 20 years ago. 25 years ago, when I was getting started in Cleveland, or maybe 30 years ago now, if you tried to do something like this, you would get a lot of people, a lot of young students, especially the guys, and they would just put their feet up on the table and diss you. They would look away, they wouldn't respond, they might even laugh. But that doesn't happen anymore. It doesn't happen at all. And in fact, at Stanford, at UCLA, at UC San Diego, here, all over the country now, there aren't that many new programs in bioethics, you know, quandary stuff. Do you use a feeding pig in a guy who's 92 and dying of Alzheimer's? Hopefully not, you know. But they have lots of new programs in positive psychology and compassionate care because everybody knows, and this is something that Sir John Templeton emphasized with me, love heals. And it does. And I operate on that basis. So they're better than they were, a lot better.
That's good. That is good too. That's good to hear. I feel like I'm also curious for everyone who's like, I want to read this book. I'm overwhelmed. Like, what is, if they could take one thing away, Like first step, what would it be?
Well, um, these 7 paths of love read like a mantra. May you give and glow. And we've done 50 articles in great medical journals about how people benefit internally when they give kindly to others. Gets the mind off the self and the problems of the self. And, we did a paper about this in a psychology journal with widows and widowers who were going through grief and bereavement. And there's a New York Society of Widows and Widowers, believe it or not. Um, and they called and they said, would you come in and give a plenary talk at our annual meeting? So I went into some hotel on Fifth Avenue, gave this talk about how people feel more able to deal with loss and disappointments. They feel happier, they feel healthier, they feel more resilient. It's a long list of good things. They're even sleeping better when they can self-report that they're helping others, maybe volunteering, but maybe just doing this informally. And so this guy in the back of the room, he was waving his hands and he said, I don't care what you say, buddy. I don't do nothing for nothing. And, there is this attitude that some people have. Everything has to be transactional. I won't define some people, but it's sort of a hot topic these days. And there's a lot of best selling books about the transactional self. But I asked this guy, are you happy? And he said, no, I'm not happy. I've never been happy. And I said, maybe you better put that idea on the shelf and just be a little more free and a little kinder, and you'll be happier. And I don't know what happened to him, but I hope it worked out.
Well, I'm sure if he thought about that at all, his life is a little bit better today than it was then.
Yeah. And the second path is may you heal with kindness, which is what we've been talking about. And anybody can do that. You don't have to be an MD or have a nursing degree. May you follow your callings. Because what is a calling? That just means that you love your work because it's just exactly where your heart is. It's where you blur the line between play and work. And so the reason I've been able to hold up in medical schools for now all these years is because every day, at least to a large extent, it's not flawless, but when I walk up the stairs, I feel like this is what I truly want to be doing. It's what I'm called to be doing. Then may you raise kind children. We've spent $3 million supporting research on that with lots of good researchers. And it's very practical because I'll tell you, if you bring children into this world and they are unkind and gremlin-like, you're not going to be a very happy mom or dad. And then finally, fifthly, may you know the one mind. I'm big into the one mind, and have known a lot of people like Larry Dossi, and the Dalai Lama wrote the foreword to this book. So he's a one mind guy, that our mind is not just derived from tissue and brain and cells, but rather in a lot of ways, it uses that as a platform, but it precedes it. So that's mind before matter, which is what all the great Eastern traditions believe, and mostly Christianity and Judaism did too. So the mystics understand that. And then sixth, may you cherish the gift of nature. Because when you go to meditate in your local community, what you'll find is there's probably a little water fountain, probably some wind chimes. When you connect with nature, you get freed up from all the anxieties of everyday life, going from point A to point B, and you discover a lot of inner peace. And then the final one is may you honor the spirit of freedom, which is basically meaning honor the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I view that as a spiritual gift. I'm sort of loosely Episcopalian because everybody who's Episcopalian is only loosely so. But I'm also, I'm very into Hinduism, and I go to Bangalore to the Indian Institute for Advanced Studies, and we had a wonderful conference on consciousness. And that consciousness is the basis of all of reality in the minds of the Hindus and in the minds of a lot of quantum physicists as well. And so we all have some of that within us. And the whole idea is to find that in the difficult moments and bring peace to the world in that freedom of love and creativity. And if you can do that, you're going to be happy. I don't use that word happiness that much, but you're still going to be happy. I'll say it. You're going to have inner peace.
This is such a good conversation, and just the way that you live, your calmness throughout the discussion, the way you approach conversation, even should tell everyone why they should read the book and pick it up. So we're at time. I appreciate you doing this so much, and if you could, there it is. Yes, there it is. Okay.
Pure Unlimited Love, with a foreword by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. The last foreword the Dalai Lama is doing, because he's 92 years old and he doesn't have it in him anymore to be writing forewords left and right. So I feel very grateful and very honored that he was able to do that.
That's amazing. Well, we will put where everyone can get the book in the show notes. But thank you.
Amazon, Amazon, whatever they get their books, usually online these days.
That's great. And if someone wants to reach out to you or send you a thank you for writing this, where could they find you?
Okay, you can go to my website, which is www.unlimitedloveinstitute.org. unlimitedloveinstitute.org. You can email me anytime you want at Stephen.post, Stephen with a PHEN, .post at stonybrookmedicine.edu. Stony Brook, STONY, and then BROOK, medicine, no periods, .edu. You can Google me. I'm around. I'm Googleable.
Googleable. Perfect. Well, thank you again, Stephen, Dr. Post. Either way, it was a pleasure to have you. And for all of you who are watching, we'll be back next week with another episode of Bestseller Live. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.